All right, Mike, we are live.
Oh, well, hi everyone. Thanks for joining this application packaging event. Hopefully everyone can see the slides now. Yeah, so thank you for joining this roundtable. Just some housekeeping rules. Everyone's going to be muted for the entire session. Please ask any questions that you may have in the Q&A chat. We'll answer those questions. Either we'll have some time at the end, or we'll post the full question list and answers in our community later on. And we'll also have this video available, recording available for others to rewatch and share to others too. So today's speakers, we've got Venkat. He's our product manager with AdminStudio, myself, and we have a special guest, TMurgent from TMurgent. So, all right.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Thanks a lot for the introduction, and welcome everyone to whoever who has joined, and to our special guest as well. Tim, thanks for joining us today. So we have an interesting discussion on state of MSIX and where we are actually in 2025 on the technology itself, and we're going to touch base on some of the key drivers for MSIX and what the key differentiators that put MSIX in its place as on today. And and we're gonna do some conversations with Tim and Mike around what enterprises face with respect to MSIX adoption, and how we think in our experience we can overcome some of these challenges. And we're also going to do a little bit of touch base on the tooling that we have. Okay, Tim has some exciting things to share. Mike has some exciting things to share, and then we will also have Q&A. There is a Q&A section available. You can drop in your questions there, and depending on the context of the question, either we will take the question then and there, or we can take all the questions towards the end. So with that, let's get started with the big elephant in the room. So the state of MSIX in 2025, right? So if you focus your attention towards the right, it's a very small timeline of how MSIX came into existence, and how it has where we landed so far. In 2018 is when I recall, I think it's at Microsoft's Build conference is when MSIX was originally launched, and there was a lot of utopia around how it can actually replace the existing deployment technologies, and it still has a lot of promise. We're going to talk about all of that, and then slowly the technology evolved, and so did people who were trying to move on to the bandwagon, right? We have in 2023 and plus, okay, we have begun to see some large vendors, including Microsoft, begin using their tooling to use MSIX, for some of the native apps. So, the migration planning, kind of, catalyzed over there. And then the current state is also that, MSIX is gaining a lot of attention, because there is a lot of uncertainty in AppV end of life, because looks like, there is some indecision, from Microsoft on, whether what we want to do with, AppV, whether we want to go ahead and do end of life for it, or, we want to continue it. There's, discussion about, how the server piece might get, discontinued, or, end of life, but then the desktop piece might continue. So this this uncertainty is I would think is one more driver which would drive adoption of MSIX in 2025, right? And we're at the seventh year in the maturity milestone, okay, which is originally proposed as the strategic successor for the conventional installation technologies like legacy MSIs, or AppV, and any other virtualization application virtualization technology for that matter, right? And some of the catalysts for adoption that we think are broad adoption given by hardware refresh cycles, moving on to Windows 11 and whatnot, right? So, and we also have some key deterrents to this, and I'd want Mike to chip in and add a few points around why MSIX is where it is, okay, which is having kind of a mixed adoption on the enterprise side.
Yeah. Well, as you said, Venkat, we've kind of, part of it is enterprises waiting for more vendor adoption, right? As vendors release their applications natively in MSIX packages and they get more comfortable in use of MSIX and its capabilities and how it's deployed and works in their environments, typically enterprises would look to adopt that more. So some of them are looking for vendors, and as you said, I think Microsoft, some of their applications like Teams is available as an MSIX package. So there's more experience with those MSIX packages out there. Combine that with things like what we're talking to a lot of folks that have looked at and moving over or implementing Intune as part of their deployment and configuration management strategy, either independent or co-managed with Config Manager for Microsoft. And Intune natively supports MSIX packages, so there's another. If the deployment system supports deploying the format, then it's something that a lot of folks may tend to look at. And then you've got just modernization mandates, different if we're redoing the environment or things like utilizing cloud migrations or implementing new security best practices, that may necessitate looking at all the applications in the environment, and if certain applications are deemed required, but maybe we want to put some additional isolation around them just for security and interoperability of other applications that may be coming in. MSIX helps with that too. And like you said, hardware refreshes can often look at requiring a revamp and rationalization of applications, and maybe MSIX is part of that too.
Right. Totally, Mike. And moving on to quick comments from Tim on, Tim, what do you think are some, catalysts for adoption here? So, what has been your experience on, how people would have, completely said meh to MSIX to, adopting MSIX?
Yeah, I think that as I talk to the customers, they all see the benefits that Microsoft is talking about, but they're generally needing a trigger in the form of some type of migration to get them started on the process. Whether that be, we're going to start doing some things up in Azure and putting VMs up there, and we need to treat them differently. Or in the case of the end of life of App V concerns, those are the triggers that are really driving those customers into MSIX today. But I think they all see the need for it.
Totally. Thanks, Tim. So with that, we'll actually have a good segue into one of our favorite content which Tim has he's probably his own analyst in this space. So Tim does a lot of testing year on year on how enterprise applications are scaling up for the adoption. So I'd like Tim to walk us through how the adoption rates have been in his analysis every year he does.
Sure. So every year I release something called the report card for MSIX, which you can download off of the TMurgent website. Just look for the report cards. These are some of the numbers from those reports over the last few years. And we've been steadily making progress on being able to handle more and more of the enterprise suite of applications within the MSIX portfolio. We started out early on. We didn't have it. Just a couple of years ago, my numbers said that we were able to do about 80% of the applications. We knew that wasn't good enough, but at least that 80% number, when I give these numbers, by the way, this is full UAT test compatibility. This isn't the simple, I packaged, I launched it, and there weren't any errors. So this is the kind of numbers that you'd want to use as an enterprise. Last year we got to the 90%. We're going to do better again this year. I don't know what those numbers are going to look like, but it'll be better than last year. Probably not quite as great of a percentage, because now we're getting more into that long tail of applications that are a little more difficult. But we're continuing to make that progress, and I think we're at a point where MSIX is ready to be the first choice for enterprises, knowing that they're still going to have a few applications that they're going to have to treat in a different fashion.
Mm-hmm. Any shout out to any applications in your testing cycle, Tim, which have evolved, over the period, which have made the transition smooth? In your testing?
In terms of the actual applications, is that what you were asking, Venkat?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I think if you just look at a lot of the Autodesk stuff, We can do a lot of their applications now, which 2 years ago, there wasn't a chance that we could do them. There was just too much in the way of COM that we couldn't do. And we've made a lot of progress on it. Now, do we have every one of their apps 100%? No, but tremendous progress there.
All right. Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks, Tim. All right. So again, as we keep talking about MSIX, it's not for the uninitiated, but there is a lot of promise, that comes in with MSIX, right? So we try to put in, we're not going to go in detail about all of these, but some of the key points that drive MSIX adoption are also its benefits, right? So MSI, though it's supposed to be the golden standard, okay, slowly started allowing scripting to be done, the custom actions and all of that started creeping in, and it totally got wrapped up into a custom action driven installer, right? App we try to cut a lot of that by providing the virtualization capability and trying to shield the user from accessing certain areas. But then MSIX, okay, takes it really to the next level with pure containerization and the ability to maintain its own virtual file system and registry isolation. And some of the my favorite thing here, okay, is the clean uninstall. We also work with a lot of enterprise customers whose biggest challenge is leaving certain files out there by conventional installers just because they have a custom action that doesn't do its job well during the uninstall sequence, right? So this is something that MSIX really shines at. And differential updates is where probably would also request some feedback from anybody of you here. This we want to keep this conversational. So if you have been using MSIX and if you have seen benefits with respect to differential updates, on how the block updates will actually help you save a lot of network costs, the upgrade cycle itself or the update time itself would actually be saved. Feel free to share your inputs here, and we're happy to read that out to our customers. So as I said, I'm not going to walk into all of these, but some of these are really niche for MSIX, which makes them stand out for the purposes of enterprises, including signing. Signing, I think, is a mixed bag, Tim. I think because having a digitally signed application right from get-go, okay, is is a desired way of doing it. However, I also understand the challenge that we have that the low-cost players may or may not be able to digitally sign their applications. So, what's your thought on this, Tim? Do you see signing as still a constraint for enterprises to adopt MSIX?
No, signing is a blocking point for them to figure out how to do that. But they're really, for the way the enterprise is going to use it, there is no cost. It's just they have to learn the process and get into that process. And once they do that, which should be no more than a couple of days, then the signing really stops being an issue.
Right. Yeah, that's good, Tim. And again, I'm just taking feedback from our users here. So, for folks who have joined in, please drop in a comment or a question or a note, to say whether signing is a friction point at this point of time, okay, in the cycle, for MSIX adoption. So we talked about a lot of good things, okay, on MSIX as why it is supposed to be a golden standard, but there's always a but, right? There is always a way of saying however, okay, this is why we can't, right? So this is some of the key challenges that we run into when people try to adopt MSIX. One of them being deep system integrations, ability to write to forbidden folders. Forbidden is probably not the best use of words here, but it's truly, yeah, apps have no business of writing to certain folders, and conventional apps or conventional installers continue to write to those, and that's a challenge. And kernel drivers and shell extensions are some of the challenges that packages still face in adopting MSIX, right? And obviously inter-app communication as well. In a plugin ecosystem, it is very challenging to have an application installed as MSIX. I know that Microsoft has done a lot of work on helping the plugin ecosystem work, okay, with MSIX, with PSF workarounds and all. But it continues to be a workaround, unfortunately, right? So, I'd also, ask, Mike to, chime in here and, talk about, some of the experience that he has with our customers on, on the technological, challenges on, adopting MSIX, on what they see with their packages.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like those non-standard launch conditions can be one. You've got applications that don't follow the standard best practices of where they launch from, so they have funky working directories that aren't necessarily standard there. They have parameters that are in the manifest. They have to show up with what's in the command line workflow. Relative path dependencies can cause some issues. Environment variables, if applications rely on that, those can cause some of the issues with applications that are written for the traditional installation space, but when you virtualize it, some of those types of conditions that relies upon can get at least tricky, if not cause it to not launch correctly.
Right. So with that, we'll also see, so this, technology aside, okay, there is challenges that come with technology, it's okay, which is, probably, we can overcome those. But there are also, a lot of, organizational hurdles, which prevent, any new tech adoption. Okay, this is not just applicable to MSIX, but in MSIX, primarily because the application could be a very critical application to the business, and, people simply cannot take a chance there. So, there is a lot of, migration inertia. I would like to start with the second point, which is, migration inertia that we see with businesses, right? So things have been going on smooth. Okay, so for me, there is no real, reason to actually adopt or shift my entire, packaging strategy to a brand new technology, right? So we see a lot of, resistance from, I'm happy and content with, my current, stack, and there is no real reason for me to actually move on, right? And then there is skill gap, right? I don't perceive this as a huge challenge, but it's still a challenge because people getting used to or institutionalized to some technologies wouldn't want to go ahead and move on to another thing, which is because MSIX doesn't come with just MSIX, because you need to understand how the tech works and how we can actually apply fix-ups. We're going to talk about PSF fix-ups in a bit, the maintaining the manifest discipline and whatnot, right? And tooling sprawl, because not a single tool can actually do everything for you in a single shot, right? So please, I need to invest on a conventional packaging tool. I need to invest on something that has MSIX better. I need to look at some community tools to get PSF tooling better and whatnot. So a single suite of tools lacking all of these capabilities is something that is perceived as another friction point. And largely again communication as well, right? Because we don't have dashboards that show migration process and whatnot. This all come into the process, they come into the way of packaging engineers trying to adopt MSIX. So what we think we can help is there is still hope, okay, from both from an organizational standpoint and a technology standpoint. Is we can go ahead and do start small, right? Start tagging applications by criticality, compatibility class and user base on start with a particular division of the enterprise only. Could be support, could be finance, or could be something else, and then start looking at how and learn application packaging using MSIX, and then how we can go ahead and scale that up to the rest of the organization. And bulk repackaging, which is use of auto remediation scripts. I'll lean on to Tim to talk about our PSFs on how we can actually go ahead and do this going forward in the subsequent slides on how to do bulk repackaging for high volume conversions, and automated compatibility testing, because it's not just about running making a MSI package into MSIX, but the ability to run them in parallel, native installs and MSIX with or without PSF, right? So now we got to do a lot of testing with the MSIX packages. Again, start small, prioritize your applications, start with a simple division, and then try to scale this up, right? And continuous integration. If you are on the other side of MSIX, which is if you're a software vendor who's trying to produce a package, okay, we really urge you to go ahead and start with MSIX first as a tech rather than MSI, right? And that will help the adoption of the tech using for your customer base as well. Having said that, these are mostly like behavioral or organizational hurdles that we can use to overcome. But then from a technology standpoint, it's really PSF in my opinion, right? So because MSIX without PSF, I think would have gotten discarded really long time back, right? So I think PSF is the real beacon of hope, where Tim here, who's a special guest today, specializes in helping you understand what and how PSF could be a real game changer when if you're trying to adopt MSIX. Now, in short, PSF is stands for Package Support Framework, is a set of runtime extensions and shims that enable legacy applications to run seamlessly within an MSIX. And as simple as that. So there is an MSIX package, it's got an issue, and then there's it's called a fix-up, a PSF fix-up, which just apply. It is probably analogous to a transform file back in the day, but it's exactly not a transform file because transform file provides customizations and everything else. But PSF is primarily the focus of PSF is primarily focused towards making the application work, right? So we have PSF to the rescue, and now I'll hand off to our expert on what PSF capabilities we have and why we should actually care about these capabilities going forward. Over to you, Tim.
Okay, thank you, Venkat. So the way that I end up describing the PSF is we really treat it as a layer, right, between the application, the traditional application that was originally designed to work as a Win32 or .NET framework application, and it acts as a layer between that and the remainder of the MSIX runtime in the operating system to transform that application and make it work in that new environment. So we have a number of different components that you see on the screen. We have to use a launcher so that we can inject the components that we need. And then we have these different fix-ups that handle different parts of the Windows API that the application would be calling and adding in the fixing for that. So the MFR fix-up is all about file things. The MSIX container natively doesn't want the application to be able to write and update any files inside the package. So we use that as a way to extend out that capability, and they can write to the files, but they're being redirected into the user's profile area where it's a safe place to do those things. We have some registry changes that happen, and we fix those up with that reg legacy fix up. We have some issues that show up with applications not finding the DLLs, and a dynamic library fix up is a very simple fix up that just basically says, if an application asks for a DLL and it's in the package, we're going to find it and give it to it. We don't have to worry about where it is in there. So an environment variable fix-up provides us environment variables, which is something MSIX natively didn't give us. So we can bring an environment variable along with the package so that it sees those things. So those are the kinds of capabilities we put in. I just ran some numbers yesterday because I didn't actually know the answer to this. So I do all this testing with these applications, and how often do I bring in the package support framework in my packages? And it turned out the answer was 90%. 90% of the packages that I do for MSIX, I bring in the PSF to help solve these types of issues. These are a lot of the things that, quite frankly, were built internally to AppV as it did its virtualization stuff. But Microsoft chose not to put them into the base of MSIX because they were really depending on developers writing their code for new in the new .NET, not .NET frameworks, but the new .NET versions like 7, 8, and 9. And those applications, when they do that, they don't need these capabilities because that structure is built into the way they're writing the apps to start with. Okay, if we can move on to the next slide. I don't know who does that.
Oh, I got you, Tim.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. So when I am looking at these applications, the stuff that I do really ends up analyzing what the native application wanted to do in the way that it would integrate into the operating system. So what are the shortcuts? What are the file associations, the shell extensions, all of the COM things? And then take a look at what the capabilities of MSIX is and figure out, well, what do we need to do to make this application, which was written for running outside of MSIX, work inside of MSIX. And so here I just showed a screenshot of one of my tools called TMurgent that has the ability to go through and figure that out for folks that were using the Microsoft method of creating the MSIX package. So Microsoft has their own tool to do that. It's not very great it gets us a basic package, and then those customers are taking that into this tool to fix it up and be able to get that high level of compatibility. Now, in the case of AdminStudio, AdminStudio has good portions, I should say good portions, it has the PSF built into some of the stuff that Mike will talk about later on. And so that becomes the path for the AdminStudio folks to be able to create that package. But quite frankly, I suspect we can probably do a little bit better by taking the stuff from AdminStudio, let it do what it does really good. Take that MSI, convert it over to the MSIX, bring in a lot of the stuff that AdminStudio is really good at. But for a few of those apps, you might end up still wanting to run it through a tool like this to be able to get that little bit of extra compatibility. And that's kind of what we're seeing with the customers that I talk to that come to our classes, is they really want to stay with AdminStudio because they love what they see in that tool. They're used to using it. And yeah, they need to learn a little bit about MSIX, and they want to get as much compatibility as they can going forward. Okay. Let's go ahead and hit next, Mike.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. So in terms of getting these applications to work, in addition to the PSF, we also have the AppXMnifest. And the AppXMnifest is something that, we had an initial version 7 years ago when things came out, but Microsoft has done an extraordinary amount of work in adding extensions to that manifest. What Microsoft really hasn't done is they have spent no time evangelizing out to us that they made these changes. And so it's been a question of our having to go in and kind of discover what's there and figure out how we can really make use of these to get that higher level of elevation. So a lot of the stuff that I did here in the last couple of years really has to do with probably the bottom half of this list, which are things that have existed there and we didn't know how to use. We had to figure them out. So install locations virtualization, that's something I use in about 75% of my packages right now, because it's the best way to get the copy on write-like functionality when the application wants to write to files in the package. The flexible virtualization is something we just looked at this summer. It had been there for a long time. We had no idea what the heck it did because Microsoft just had this thing. And we're starting to make use of that, and it solves problems, particularly with some of the new .NET applications that weren't released in MSIX form. As we bring them in, I'm finding I want to turn on some of that functionality due to a small conflict in the way that they write their settings files. So we take care of that stuff now. And WebView too. I think any of the modern apps out there, I found out that in my looking at my numbers, I'm having to add WebView 2 support in about 10% of the applications. Now, it's something simple to do in the AppXMnifest file, but it's something we need to know to do as we bring those applications over, and we're getting better and better at that. Let's go to the next slide. So in terms of the things that I have, right? So the packet support framework, I mean, that's open source code, but I'm really the maintainer for the PSF these days. So it's up on GitHub, but we have binary releases, which is what Flexera picks up and then brings in their tooling so that they can provide that for you. There is some wiki documentation that's up there as well. That is software that quite frankly, we have releases on the average about every 2 months. So what you see in AdminStudio may not be the latest and greatest that's out there because the release cycle is a little bit longer. But we're at this point, what we're doing is incremental things. So I think that that's perfectly fine. PSF tooling, I know people know about it. That was really an old original tool that we use when in conjunction with the Microsoft packaging tool. It really was limited into how far it can go. I do still maintain it because I have some people that continue to use it, but we have much better ways to bring in the PSF and to fix up the packages today, whether that be in the MSIX editor stuff that Mike's going to talk about, or with my TMEditX that'll go in and bring these pieces in. I did break out a free tool from that package that we call TMEditX tools now. So this is a free community tool, has 2 pieces to it. One of them is for the packager after they finish the package and they want to test out that application package right away. They don't want to have to go to some infrastructure to deploy for that test purposes. And so right on that very machine, they can just right click, install that application. Even if what they're wanting to test is AppAttach, we don't have to go to Azure and go to the console and do that. We can just do that directly on the VM right there. And so that's a nice little tool. It also has some debugging capabilities for things like we want to inject the command into the container of the application to see exactly what the container is seeing, to do a little debugging. It has things for that. The Part PSF debug log is really a trace thing that comes out of the PSF and allows us something that looks probably a little bit more like a Procmon display to figure out what the application was doing and what's going wrong when you have a problem. So those are the free tools we have there. On the right-hand side, I mentioned our training, which I think is absolutely critical for folks that want to do things within MSIX. Find a way to get yourself into one of our classes. It's a 4-day class, 8 days, 8 half days if we do it online, and we do both. And there we'll teach you what you need to do to be successful in the MSIX training. And quite frankly, we'll make you a better packager no matter what you're packaging for. Because a good part of what we're doing is really helping you understand what are those interfaces that the vendor is putting down in your system, why are they there, how can you manipulate them, and then how do you go about debugging problems. I mean, yeah, we're going to teach you specifics about MSIX, but all that other stuff is helpful no matter what type of packaging you're doing. All right, we go to the next slide, Mike. So this is that MSIX deploy tool. I'm just showing you an example of some applications we have here. All of that green stuff you see in the middle there, those are the different parts of the PSF that are in those different packages. And we would just come in here and we would be able to deploy them locally, whether they're in MSIX form or in the AppAttach form, and then test them out and do a little bit of debugging right from that tool. You go to the next one, Mike. This is just a screenshot of that parse logging thing, where we can go and we can actually see, oh, the application was asking for this file in this way, and what was the result of that? And so we provide a very simple answer to that across the board, like you might see in a Procmon trace, but also you can dig down and see the detail. What was the package support framework actually doing in that case? What was it looking for in terms of, the file asks, if an app asks for a file, it might be in the native location because they're trying to pick up a DLL out of the Windows System 32 folder that's not part of your package. Or they may be asking for something that's a native path and it might be in the package. Or it may be a file that we've already modified and so it's in the redirection area. And so that kind of detail gets pulled out of a tool like that. So with that, Mike, you can go to the next slide and talk about your stuff.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, Tim. So I wanted to bring up the, for those that have AdminStudio or maybe looking at it and not familiar with the capabilities we have in MSIX. So wanted to speak to that.
And while Mike brings up his screen, where he can show the MSIX editor in action. So we are aware of the bunch of questions available in the Q&A, and I'm so glad to have this engagement with the community. As soon as the demo is complete, we will pick up all of these questions one by one. And Tim, Mike, and me, we're probably going to be taking all of these questions maybe. All
right. Let me know if that comes up for you.
Yep, we see it.
All right, perfect. All right, cool. So I'm in AdminStudio, specifically the application manager, which is the front end for what's called the application catalog. It's a SQL database, either you host or you can host in the cloud. And this is kind of your workspace to prepare applications, whatever you need to do. So traditional, let's take an MSI package and create a transform file for it, or repackage an exe into an MSI. But we can also do MSIX. We can launch the repackager that we include natively supports MSIX as a package format. So repackaging, just a quick review, is running the original vendor's installation, typically an exe that doesn't really work well with silent command line switches or anything. But if you want to move to MSIX, you can run that on a clean machine. We capture the end result of that installation, and we can build, among other things, an MSIX package, and we can digitally sign it at that point too, at which point it can be imported in the catalog. You can see I have a version of Notepad++, and got a few different versions available, the original exe and the MSI. I had an AppV package for it. something else we support is if you were a heavy user of AppV packages and you're looking to migrate over to MSIX, we do support the native conversion from AppV to MSIX, so you can do that. And then once you have the MSIX package, either through the repackager or converting AppV to MSIX or whatever, we can edit that up. And we do have an editor for that MSIX package, so I can modify the package information. Just like if you're familiar with like our install shield solution, a lot of times that would create an MSI. You wanted to maybe add some additional files or registry key items. Not usually do that through a transform for a vendor app, but if it's say an internally built app, you can add those files directly. Well, you could do a similar process with MSIX packages. So if there's a file that you need to add specifically to the AppV package version, you can do that here. So you can see the file structure. I can delete files. I can add new files here. Same with the registry. I can see what the registry, the virtual that's inside the virtual packages exists here. And then I can go ahead and create new values in here. I can see the different dependencies and set up information there. So Windows dependencies, or if there's other packages it depends on, or drivers. Drivers can install natively as part of the MSIX package, but they could be installed separately, and you can set up that dependency. Different package declaration rules that you may want to set up. Capabilities to allow you to control what MSIX packages can and can't do on your machine. Applications, which are basically the analogous to shortcuts, and how they are visible within, those as tiles. They show up, they get installed on Windows. So you can configure some of that information, changing different visual assets like the app icon and different resolutions of it. If you need to change that. Then we show things like package declaration, content URL. And as Tim mentioned, there's oftentimes you need fix-ups. So we have a support for a lot of different fix-ups that you can apply, either file redirection, PowerShell scripts. So you may want to run a script at launch or at the conclusion of the MSIX package that may need to configure something so the app runs properly. File not found, registry keys. So a lot of different fix-ups you can configure. There's also a trace option where you'll sign and we can build the MSIX package, and then you'll actually run it. And as you run it, it'll look to see if there's any issues that it's found, and then have some recommendations for fix-ups too. So you don't necessarily have to know exactly what fix-up to supply. The editor can suggest some fix-ups for you as well. Cool. So that's the capabilities around AdminStudio. Oh, and was mentioned app attached. We can also convert MSIX packages to app attached. So if you're going to Azure or similar, you can create those natively too. And of course, we support publishing to various different distribution systems like Config Manager and Intune. So we can natively publish MSIX packages to your Intune environment, for example, too. Cool.
All right. Thanks a lot, Mike. I think we can get the slides back, and let me do this. I think we have quite a few questions. Okay, so
sure.
I think Tim and I have been trying to answer them in line, for which doesn't require a conversation, but then we can have a few of them read out. Okay, which is I'll just read out a question to you, Tim. So MSI has custom action, okay, which helps packages to do some action as expected. Is it possible on MSIX?
Yeah, it is. I answered this in the chat as well. And it's a partial answer. So for most of the custom actions, the kind of things that people need to do that dynamically on that machine, knowing who the user is, other things about that environment, we need to make some special changes. Those types of things generally we can do with the PSF and the PSF scripting. So you'd have a PowerShell script that would make those decisions and make those changes. And we would typically pull assets out. For example, I would want to do a package, let's say that worked with a backend database. I'd only want to package it up once, but I want to be able to have that custom action that happens on a deployment that says, oh, should I be talking to the dev prod or test databases, right? And so we do that type of configuration. But when it comes to things like installing device drivers or other dependencies, we can't do those things because these are scripts that are going to run in the user context, not during the install context. So for those things, you're going to depend on the management tools to deploy those types of dependencies down.
Thank you. There's a particular question on AutoCAD. I think let me just read that out. How much extra packaging and testing time would you say occurs as a result of converting an AutoCAD application from vendor setup to MSIX? This would be extra time beyond conventional packaging methods like applying silent switches or creating answer files with PowerShell wrapping. So I think let me kind of simplify that. So in your experience, Tim, have you tried some AutoCAD applications, and how has it been?
Yeah, I think for a lot of the AutoCAD applications, and I would include things like Revit, for example, the packaging time is really the same. It's really that testing time, because those are very large products, and you want to make sure you cover enough of the functionality in that testing that yeah, you would need to spend a little more time on those. Now, on the other hand, there are going to be ones like the main AutoCAD product itself right now. I wouldn't try to deploy that in MSIX. I know we have problems with that application. And so if you didn't know that coming in, you would go through that process and you'd find some failures there. And you're going to spend some time figuring that out. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And I think Darren is asking, I think, sharing his experience here. Okay, talking about having a hard time justifying the extra time of hiring high caliber packages, losing vendor support, and extra business testing required to convert our app stack to MSIX. And thanks a lot for sharing this, Darren. And this exactly resonates with what we're trying to say with respect to either requiring more time for packages, or acquiring highly skilled packages, or over trying to overcome the existing inertia of adopting something as well, right? And thanks a lot for sharing this comment with us, Darren. And there is a comment about MSP data, again from Darren. Thanks a lot again for this comment, or a question actually. If you have any data coming in from MSPs on how the adoption has been. I think we have at least one big MSP who recommends MSI packages first. So don't have data at this point of time, but this is good input for us, Darren, to go ahead and gather some data.
Yeah, I was going to say to that, Venkat, I don't have data either, but I do have a number of MSPs that have been regularly coming to the classes because their customers are pushing them, and they're trying to figure out, okay, how do I say yes to these customers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sounds.
All right. So do you see hardware vendors adopting MSIX? Okay. So I'm going to lean on you, Tim, for this.
Hardware vendors?
I mean, I think the question behind that could be towards drivers and kernels.
Well, the drivers really end up having to stay out of MSIX. So yeah, I don't see hardware vendors all that interested. I mean, if they have a GUI portion of their application that goes with it, then perhaps. But as I answered in one of those other questions, I think we're seeing new software is more interested in MSIX than old software and converting it over, right? So all of those apps that you've been running that 10-year-old version of, that vendor is probably never going to deliver that app to you in MSIX itself. So that's one that you're going to end up having to repackage yourself and do, or replace it with a more modern version of that same functionality by somebody else when that comes out.
Totally. And here is one more. How do you recommend inventorying MSIX in deployment tools and inventory tools that don't recognize modern apps?
Get a better inventory tool. The information's there in PowerShell. Okay, any inventory tool should be able to handle that.
Right. Okay. Do you have any recommendations on how the signing process can be simplified? I think thanks for Saugata for asking this question. Do you have any recommendations on how this can be simplified for enterprises?
I think you just have to learn how to do it. I mean, we cover this in part of our training. And it really is simple. Once you have it once you have it in place, you understand the process. You get your people to use it. There are different ways that we can set this up depending on your security needs, but it is really simple once you get it in place.
Yeah, I agree with that, comment because, Saugat, I think, the way to do that, in a simplistic way is to just get yourself, an Azure, service that provides the signing and, use a conventional, tool set like AdminStudio or, use a sign tool for, your signing process.
And AdminStudio makes it easy to sign because you can do it at the repackaging times, the initial capture process. You can import it at any point once it's imported in the catalog. If you want to make any modifications, you can re-sign it with the MSIX editor. So all throughout that process, right? Any creation and changes you make, you can easily re-sign it.
Yeah, and the other thing that people don't really understand typically with the signing is the whole timestamping thing, and the fact that when that certificate expires, that package is still valid as long as you keep the timestamping piece. And so as long as that's all set up in your AdminStudio console, then that's going to happen automatically every time you package, and you're good to go.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. And there's a question called, I think to Mike. Mike, I would like you to take this. I think we have this, but I don't know. I'd want you to confirm. Can AppV to MSIX conversion be done in bulk, and can that process be automated?
So there's, I think with the workflows, the packaging workflows that we have in AdminStudio, there's an option to choose convert, and that convert could be moving to MSIX. So how we would do it is we'd have a folder, kind of an internal Dropbox that you would set up, and you would you'd set up a workflow that says, hey, I want to convert these to MSIX packages, and you drop those in that folder, and it would periodically check for it, see any new ones, and run through that conversion process and import those into the application catalog, that workspace that we have in AdminStudio, at which point you can then, and signing is part of it too. So, and then you can hand it off to deployment if that's what you want to do, or even just copy it out to a folder that you can grab and put it in, Azure, or upload there, or whatever you want to do.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, as I see customers go through that type of conversion, the number one problem they run into has nothing to do with this technology change. It really has to do with all of the AppV scripts that they had in their old packages. Every one of those is going to have to get looked at to determine what the right thing to do is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool.
I think we covered almost all the questions over here.
Somebody asked, they just kind of wanted high-level difference between AdminStudio and some of the native tools that are out there. So, right, as Tim said, right, Microsoft provides a basic tool to create MSIX packages. It's okay. A lot of times you have to fix it in a tool like Tim's or something else. Where AdminStudio, where we pull is MSIX just becomes another format that we support. So the idea is all your packages can come in. You may not necessarily want everything to go to MSIX. You may still want to deploy MSIs in certain use cases. So think of it's the same workflow. It's the same solution that packages would come in. And then depending on your use cases and needs and the application itself, we do some upfront testing too. MSIX just becomes another format that we can create for you and edit and sign and process. So that way, regardless of what you need to support, what's coming from the vendor and what you want to push out the door, AdminStudio can be consumed in there, prepared in that format, MSIX included, and then handed off to the various different distribution systems versus a lot of disparate, tooling that you have to kind of jump around. AdminStudio's an end-to-end suite to aid in that creation.
It's an interesting question on vulnerability management. I think vulnerability management is a key factor. And we see that there's simple applications like Notepad++, 7-Zip, and Chrome, which we package several times. Right? So is MSIX going to help that process? So I would probably say, and I would also let Tim comment on this, but I would probably say it depends on case to case on how the applications actually interact with the whole operating system. If there are layers that actually interact with it, I don't think MSIX is going to be that security layer to avoid or prevent that. You would still require a vulnerability management tool to identify what issues are available in the in the applications, and reach out to the vendor to say, hey, fix these problems. But Tim, what's your take on whether applications are completely shielded by vulnerabilities if they're packaged into MSIX?
Okay, yeah, we would never say that's completely shielded, but are they less likely to either get a problem or cause a bigger problem once a problem occurs when you're running a container? I'd say, yes, it's less likely to be a problem. One thing we have been doing with customers is making sure that we remove out a lot of the standard components, like the VC runtimes, and we actually keep them out of the packages so that you centrally manage that one time and make sure that we don't have any of those in the packages as part of that packaging process. That's something that makes an awful lot of sense. We're also looking at the newer runtimes rather than the VC runtimes, the Microsoft Windows app runtimes. Those are external packages now that Microsoft provides as framework packages that you manage and update once. And we keep all of that stuff out of the packages. That's the best way to be secure going forward, so that when there is an issue, you don't even necessarily need to take the new version from the vendor. If it was a VC runtime, you're probably solving that with an updated external VC runtime. But I know that Flexera has some great tools to do things like alerting you the fact that, oh, there is something there, and maybe you should just go ahead and repackage. So I think you're better off in this fashion. But that's me. I'm kind of big on MSIX, I suppose.
I think you covered this once, Tim, but can you try and see if you can repeat this for us? How Windows shared components are used. Windows shared components are used in MSIX, that is VC++, COM components, etc.
Yeah, I don't use AdminStudio every day, so I'm not exactly sure what would happen there in using that through the editor there. But I know in my tooling, we just provide a setup checkbox that says, don't let these things go in, and notify me that this package has a dependency on them, right? So we do those types of things. And, we just want to make it as simple as possible for folks in that fashion. Now, one thing that people don't necessarily understand is the whole single instance nature of MSIX. So like if I were to allow all of those things to go in all my packages, at the end of the day, there's only actually one copy down on disk on your system with all these packages that use it. So under the covers, there's like a deduplication that's going on there. So sometimes I have customers that say, I don't really care about that stuff in security. I just want to make sure everything is there inside my package and it's going to absolutely work no matter what. And then the system just takes care of that dedupe.
Exactly. All right, I think we have covered all the questions here, and I think I'll just go, give my quick take on a wrap up here, okay, and then I'll let Tim comment on this. I think so far I think we've been really great on this journey. It's been a little slow to my liking, definitely, for a technology as big as MSIX and for its adoption. However, we still haven't lost hope, and there is thanks to Tim and a lot of community experts who are driving this adoption. MSIX continues to be a promise, and it just requires a little more nudge from from enterprises with respect to adoption. And we cannot really control all the ISVs, but when it comes to enterprise, there's a single place where people can go ahead and move to MSIX with all the available PSFs that Tim has talked about. So Tim, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, and that's that. What I see happening under the covers from Microsoft is something that I know, a lot of folks who are just real diehard, I'm going to stay with MSI. You're always going to be able to use MSI. But if you look at the way the MSI and the EXE installers integrate into the operating system, it's actually very different from MSIX. Part of that promise of pulling things in and out means that, for example, the COM registration stuff, when an app goes in, it's not writing into the common classes key, just like the native MSI does. That's all separated out on a per package basis. As Microsoft adds more and more applications on their own, which they've been doing. Like I looked at my system yesterday, and I had just a base operating system, and I had 60 different MSIX packages on that system because of all of these little things that Microsoft has been doing. That's going to become the new native. That's going to be the way that we want applications to integrate into the operating system for the purposes of the stability of the OS and the security of it going forward. So, eventually that's going to become the norm, and MSI will become what we do with some of the older applications. That's sort of my viewpoint anyway.
Reduce the OS rot, right, of Windows. Yeah.
All right, thanks, Tim. And Mike, anything from your side before we move on to community?
Yeah, just that Flexera and AdminStudio will support the different technologies as they develop. So we hear from our customers and we tell them which ones are interested in MSIX, and we'll support them there. We support wrapping. So if you want to do more traditional deployment, we know there's different scenarios. So we're there for you, whatever you need to support for your enterprise.
Right, Mike, I think we can talk about the community slides now.
Yeah. So we do have, if you're not familiar, Flexera has a customer community. There's a corner of the community dedicated to AdminStudio. So this is where we have links to the help documentation. There's Learning Center. Those are recorded videos to help you walk through if you're new to AdminStudio. We have a blog that Venkat and others will post on. There's one specifically for new releases. So as we release the new AdminStudio, we're trying to do multiple times a year. We'll release what's available then. So if you always want to know what's the latest and greatest, you can check that out. And then an ideas area too. So you can post if you have certain product enhancement ideas that you want to post to us. So there's our Learning Center and different videos, course of you that's available. Active forums, of course. So if you have questions, you can browse through the forums. Most likely, maybe the question's already been asked in the past and answered, but you can always post new questions and we'll answer them pretty quickly there too. Also, this is where, if you're an active AdminStudio customer, where you go for to submit support cases with our technical support team. You can do that through the community as well. A lot of different videos that are available, like that one. Yeah, and then now we're interested in hearing about what you want to hear in future packaging roundtable forums like this one. So long URL. You can also search for it as well on the community. But if you have any specific topics you want us to cover in the future for a future one, but really appreciate, Tim, for you being here today as our special guest and giving your wisdom about MSIX packages.
Thanks. It was nice to talk with you guys today.
I appreciate it. So we'll plan to have another one in a couple months. I think we'll have one around the November timeframe. But join us next time for those future discussions. And we all appreciate you being here, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you all.